Joumanna, just tell us what we know about these protests and what caused them.
Well, many local Israeli outlets are calling this 12 hours of chaos. What we know is that many demonstrators and far-right lawmakers from within Netanyahu's coalition stormed two of these military bases overnight. They were protesting against the arrest of soldiers at one of the bases where suspected Hamas fighters who carried out the October 7 attacks were being held. The Israeli military police say that they raided the base following allegations that an inmate was subject to serious abuse. And this is, of course, the same base where many Palestinian political prisoners are being held and has been subject to Supreme Court challenges by human rights watchdogs alleging intolerable conditions. And later in the evening, the riot spread to another military base as well, where other soldiers were also being detained. Now, even though there were no immediate reports of arrest or injuries, what it does show is just further upheaval domestically. You even had the likes of the National Security Minister, Ben Gvir, put out a tweet saying, and this is a quote, "Take your hands off the reservists," and does just another illustration of how Netanyahu's own coalition is very much divided and split, even over something involving how its own political prisoners are treated. And this is coming at a time when you would think that the security officials would be meeting to discuss the potential reprisal over the Golan Heights attack over the weekend.
Meanwhile, you've got the diplomatic efforts continuing to avoid this all-out war on Israel's northern border. What's the latest on that?
Well, the latest is that Lebanon, the country as a whole, has been preparing for a reprisal in response to those Golan Heights attacks, with Israel and the U.S. pointing their finger at Hezbollah denying responsibility. And yet the country is preparing itself for a potential reprisal. Many diplomatic efforts have gone through in an attempt to convince the Israeli side to keep it limited. And indeed, many Israeli outlets are now reporting that if there is a response, it will be limited, quote, but significant. On the back of that, we have seen many flights out of Beirut airport delayed or postponed. Some embassies like Germany and Australia advising their citizens to leave the country. Next 24 hours are going to be crucial. But it is worth pointing out that Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, said he does not want to see the conflict escalate. You have the European Foreign Affairs Chief, Joseph Borrell, calling on all parties to exercise restraint. And even the Lebanese foreign minister gave an interview to a local station saying Israel will escalate in a limited way and Hezbollah will respond in a limited way. These are the assurances we've received. So the diplomatic channels are working hard to keep this a contained response.
And Joumanna, you touched on the business impact, airlines suspending some flights. How are the markets reacting?
Well, what you've seen up until the weekend is actually an outperformance of Israeli assets. Up until the Golan Heights attack, what you saw was actually a huge outperformance for some of the local bonds, the dollar bonds within Israel was some of the best performing assets worldwide. The Israeli shekel, you started to see somewhat of a stabilization, and then the Golan Heights attack happened. Instantaneously, you saw the shekel drop about 1.5%, even though some stabilization came through over the course of the day yesterday when it became apparent that Israel was not yet ready to launch an all-out offensive. The currency and the bonds continue to be a very strong gauge for how investors are feeling about a risk in the region. Not being manifested in oil, interestingly, which we're keeping a close eye on, continues to break through $80 to the downside, completely brushing off concerns about what is happening in the risk geopolitically. But as of yet, for the month of July, even with the gyrations of the last couple of days, Israeli assets have done quite well. And that also, Lizzie, is an anticipation of more optimism around this potential Gaza ceasefire deal that we've been talking about.